Welcome to Killer. I am David, and Craig is here with me. We are back after a long hiatus. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing exceptional. How are you doing?
I am doing exceptional as well. Not to mention, we're also not recording at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I probably sound a lot more excited than usual.
Yeah, that is a big change, and hopefully we stick to that change because 4 o'clock in the morning sucks. Just be honest.
It really does, but it's hard to get a house that is silent when you have a little family running around here. So, anyway, needless to say, we have a jam-packed show for you today, and we're just going to get rolling right into it, and take it away, Craig.
Yeah, just like old times, you are listening to Killer, and this is the Case Update Show.
Lock your doors, bolt your windows, and turn off the lights. We're about to begin.
All right, that takes us to case number 2, Molly Tibbetts. Since we last chatted on Molly Tibbetts, just to give a quick recap, July 18th, 2018, Molly Cecilia Tibbetts went for a run near her home in Brooklyn, Iowa, and that would be the last time anyone saw her again. During her run, she was stalked by 24-year-old Christian Bahena Rivera. Surveillance video evidence would show Rivera's car tailing Tibbetts during her run, leading police to investigate him. Rivera would ultimately lead police to her body in a cornfield located in Passaic County. On August 21st, he would be charged with her murder. So, we covered that case. One of the first cases we actually covered, it was our second case, and ever since then, things have been a little bit slow going. However, we do have a few updates. Craig, what do you got?
Yeah, the first update we have is from the Des Moines Register, dated January 30th, 2020. And this is in response to some robocaller activity. The neo-Nazi podcaster who allegedly used Iowa College student Molly Tibbetts' death to promote a white nationalist message in a 2018 robocall campaign could face nearly $13 million in fines, the Federal Communications Commission proposed Thursday.
FCC officials proposed a $12.9 million fine against Utah resident Scott Rhodes, who they say made 827 robocalls between August 28th and August 30th, 2018 to Brooklyn, Iowa numbers. His message used slurs and urged residents to support the deportation of non-white immigrants.
The Iowa calls, which used Brooklyn's local area code and prefix, were among half a dozen targeted attacks the FCC said Rhodes directed across the country in 2018. FCC officials say the calls violated the Truth in Caller ID Act.
Tibbetts' family members were among those who received the calls just days after she was found stabbed to death. Christian Bahena Rivera, an undocumented Mexican immigrant, was charged with first-degree murder in the slaying.
To add to this, Rhodes made other robocalls as part of 5 other campaigns in Georgia, Idaho, Virginia, Florida, and California. He is being given the opportunity to respond to the FCC allegations before further action is taken. As part of these campaigns, he attacked his hometown newspaper, the Sandpoint Reader, after it outed him as the robocaller. These robocalls called the paper's publisher a cancer and a degenerate bartender, and finished by telling the recipient to burn out the cancer.
So that was pretty intense little campaign that Scott was putting on. Now, this update is sort of out of order from the rest of the updates to this case, but it's a little bit different in the fact that it's not really related to the case itself. It's more of something that was going on adjacent to the case, and I just thought it was fascinating. I had no idea this was even going on until I started researching some of the stuff, and I couldn't believe, well, I can believe that somebody was out there doing these things, but it was just shocking to me when I saw that they were proposing a almost $13 million fine on this guy.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was just a whole propaganda slur, it sounded like, and lesson learned to all those out there that want to robocall people and harass them. You could be facing a huge fine, which I applaud because I can't stand those calls. Regardless of what the origin of the call is, I absolutely hate them.
Not only that, but this one was extra disgusting in the fact that it was extremely white nationalist, and it was just degrading, and the family members themselves got caught up in this campaign, and it was, fresh wounds, man. This happened right on the heels of everything that was going on, and it's disgusting. She was, murdered like a month and a half before this robocall campaign started, and they identified the murderer like a week before the robocall started, and it was just a lot of emotions were flying high. That community was rallying around this case and working really hard to try and track down Molly's killer. Or at the time, they were trying to find Molly because they weren't sure she had died. There were false reports of seeing her at truck stops and such. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you see the scum of the earth. You know, we talk about the scum of the earth quite a bit in these cases, but you know, here's other degenerates outside of that, and these people are just as equally disgusting.
Yeah, I think degenerate's a good word for it, because it's just simply amazing the length that people will go to take advantage of a situation, no matter how disgusting or how foul it is. They find a way to totally take advantage of a situation and use it to either push their message or just try to really sway people's thinking, I think, is a lot of it, especially with this white nationalist garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these people, they're like real life phishing scams, you know, that you see on the internet. It's just, you can never let your guard down.
No,
anywhere.
Absolutely not.
On August 22nd, 2018, Rivera was charged with first-degree murder. The judge raised his bond from $1 million to $5 million when the prosecutor noted him as a flight risk. On August 24th, Rivera changed his legal counsel. Chad and Jennifer Freese, a married couple who normally work for different law firms, were privately retained by Rivera's relatives to represent him. On September 19th, Rivera pleaded not guilty.
The Iowa Supreme Court has denied a motion to further review evidence from the case. The order comes after a judge in Poshuet County ordered a stay in the case. The stay was ordered when Bahena Rivera's attorney filed a request to have the court's decision on a suppression motion reviewed by the Iowa Supreme Court. His trial was set to begin on Tuesday, February 4th in Woodbury County.
The defense made claims that Rivera was not properly Mirandized. The court agreed any statements made between 11:30 p.m. August 20th and early on August 21st should be suppressed. His defense had also stated that he was coerced into giving a confession with the promise of leniency. However, the courts have ruled that he was not.
Following the capture of Bahena Rivera, many people began politicizing the case, leveraging it as a chance to show illegal immigration is bad for the country. We're not going to get into politics here, but it is worth noting this was a major issue surrounding the immediate aftermath of his arrest.
So in a similar vein to the robocaller, politicians, media, etc. were all over this case, trying to use it to politicize things and push their agendas. So I thought that was a little disgusting and extremely distasteful in this case. Maybe there were some valid points here or there on either side, but I don't really want to get into the politicization of this. I feel like politics is pervading everything anymore, and let's just step aside.
Right. I totally agree. And that's going to be a hard bullet to dodge for the next, 8-9 months? So we'll do our best.
No kidding. All right, moving on to the next case. The Toolbox Killers, case number 9. From the Daily Breeze, Lawrence Bittaker, one of 2 South Bay men convicted of kidnapping, raping, torturing, and killing 5 teenage girls in 1979, has died at the age of 79 from natural causes on San Quentin's death row, officials announced Monday. Bittaker and Roy Norris, 71, of Redondo Beach, were partners in the horrific string of murders. Over a span of 5 months, from June to October of 1979, the victims, some of them hitchhikers, ranged from 13 to 18 years old, and were from the South Bay, Long Beach, and San Fernando Valley.
The notorious pair who terrorized the region were dubbed the Toolbox Killers. Bittaker, who in the words of one state Supreme Court justice displayed astonishing cruelty, was convicted of the grisly murders and condemned to death in March of 1981. He died at about 4 p.m. Friday at San Quentin State Prison, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officials said Monday.
Most of Bittaker's victims were strangled, with 2 stabbed in the head with ice picks. Evidence showed they also used vice grips, wire hangers, and a sledgehammer to torture the girls. He used a tape recorder to document one of the victims' dying screams, evidence that was played at his 1981 trial, and elicited tears from jurors and others in Torrance Superior Court.
Among them was a veteran prosecutor, Stephen Kay. Kay, who also helped in the prosecution of Charles Manson, described Bittaker as more savage than Manson. "I'm upset that he beat the system," Kay said in an interview Monday. "He died a natural death, something that his victims didn't have a chance for. They had their whole lives ahead of them. They never got to get married, have children, or grandchildren. The last thing they saw on earth were these 2 monsters." Bittaker's victims were Lucinda Schaefer, 16, of Torrance, Jacqueline Lamp, 13, of Redondo Beach, Jackie Gillum, 15, of Long Beach, Andrea Hall, 18, of Tujunga, and Shirley Ledford, 16, of Sun Valley. Most of them were plucked off the streets in South Bay.
The 2 men who met in prison drove a van, scouring the coastal areas in search of their victims. The pair took the girls to isolated mountain areas, including the San Gabriel Mountains, where they were tormented and killed. 2 of the bodies were never found. Norris pleaded guilty to all counts against him and agreed to testify against Bittaker in exchange for prosecutors not seeking the death penalty, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's officials said. He cooperated with prosecutors and was sentenced to serve 45 years to life in prison with the possibility that he would someday be paroled.
From CBS LA out of Los Angeles, one of the two men known as the Toolbox Killers, responsible for the 1979 murders of 5 teen girls in Southern California, has died. Roy Lewis Norris passed away from natural causes Monday at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville, according to the State Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. He was 72. His death came a little more than 2 months after his partner in the crimes, Lawrence Sigmund Bittaker, who died on death row at San Quentin State Prison at the age of 79.
So this update came out hot today. You sent this one over to me this morning, which was just timely. The age reported for Norris, I believe, was 71 in the original article from just a couple months ago. So it seems like he's had a birthday since then. But man, good riddance.
I completely and totally agree. When we did that case, I think we were both of the thinking of why were these guys, based on the horrific acts that they performed on these girls, why were they not sentenced to death? And why were they still sitting in prison this many years later? I mean, they should have been put down a long time ago.
No kidding. And I know that pretty recently, I think the current governor of California, and I apologize if that's slightly off, but I think that's the case, he said they were not going to perform the death penalty.
That is correct.
And I think we talked about that at the conclusion of our Golden State Killer series. So I don't know, but man, if 2 dudes ever deserved it, it was those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that just the amount of evidence, and like we discussed during the original case, the audio recordings that were retained for FBI training to desensitize them to the horrific things that they may see in the field. It's just astonishing that these guys weren't both sentenced to death. I mean, I know that California is fairly lenient on the death penalty, but they should have maybe took a second take on that one for this case.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm actually quite surprised those 2 also survived prison justice.
With Bittaker, I think he was just absolutely crazy. I mean, didn't we talk about him receiving letters from fans and him writing them back, and he would sign the letters Pliers. So
yeah,
maybe there's nobody that really wanted to even come into close contact with these guys because of what they did. I mean, I know prison's rough, and I'm sure there's a fair amount of individuals in there that don't care who they were or what they did. They may have tried to rough them up, but there might have been some taboo around them, like, just stay away from these guys. You don't want nothing to do with them at all.
Yeah, exactly. They're just two of the worst of humanity here. Just 2 disgusting, nasty individuals who clearly have no regard for human life.
What do you think about them dying so closely together? You hear that with married couples.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that struck me. I think I texted you that, like, wow, that was a little close together there. But yeah, like you said, it's like married couples. You hear like the wife passes away and the husband goes like a month later.
Right, exactly. It's almost like they were
strange.
It's almost like they were life partners. Like one died and the other one was just died of grief because his best buddy had passed away. It's weird.
Yeah, it is absolutely strange. I don't know, but all I can say is good riddance.
Yep, that's a final update on that case, hopefully.
Unless they recover the remains of the other 2 women who weren't found.
Yeah, that is true.
And now for an update on the Pike County murders.
The Pike County shootings took place on the night of April 21st to 22nd, 2016, when 8 people, all belonging to the Roden family, were shot and killed in 4 homes in Pike County, Ohio, near the village of Peebles, 50 miles from Chillicothe and 60 miles from Cincinnati. Their bodies were found later on April 22nd. 7 of the victims, 6 adults and a 16-year-old boy, were discovered to have been shot execution-style in 3 adjacent houses, while the 8th victim, an adult, was found shot to death in his camper in nearby Piketon. 3 young children, including 2 infants, were left alive during the killings. At least 2 shooters are believed to be responsible.
On November 13th, 2018, the suspects accused of murdering 8 family members in Ohio were taken into police custody. 47-year-old Billy Wagner was arrested in Lexington, Kentucky. The suspects are all members of the Wagner family from South Webster. There's George Billy Wagner III, mentioned before. He was the father. He was arrested in Fayette County, Kentucky. Angela Wagner, 48, George's wife, was arrested at her home in Scioto County. George Wagner IV, 27, he was the son, was arrested during a traffic stop in Ross County. Edward Jake Wagner, 26, also the son, was arrested along with his brother during a traffic stop in Ross County. Rita Newcomb, 65, of South Webster, mother of Angela Wagner, and Frederica Wagner, 76, of Lucasville, mother of Billy Wagner, are accused of perjury and obstruction of justice for allegedly misleading investigators. Newcomb also is charged with forging custody documents to cover up the crimes. In December of 2019, she pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of obstructing official business in connection with the investigation of the April 2016 homicides. In exchange, prosecutors dropped the forgery, obstruction of justice, and perjury charges against her.
Two separate updates from WHIO. The first update, June 26, 2019, charges of perjury and obstruction of justice are dropped against Frederica Wagner. And on September 16th of 2019, Angela Wagner caught reaching out to Jake Wagner, her son, and Rita Jo Newcomb, her mother, in violation of her gag order not to contact other co-defendants. She now can only contact her attorneys over mail and telephone.
From Fox 19, on September 20th, 2019, the eldest Wagner brother appeared in court Friday morning for a motions hearing. The murder trial for George Wagner IV was originally slated to begin September 4th, but it was pushed back during his last pretrial hearing, July 24th, to an undetermined date. During that hearing, Wagner's defense attorneys accepted 2 terabytes of evidence from the state, and Pike County Circuit Court Judge Randy Deering gave them more time to prepare for their case.
The prosecutor, who calls this one of the most complex criminal cases in state history, says there are more than 2 million items on the disk. The evidence includes documents, recordings, videos, pictures, cell phone records, and forensic reports. Friday morning, Deering went through a number of motions, including one about the amount of evidence the defense is still trying to comb through.
So to sidestep for just a moment here and interject, I work in IT for a living, and I deal with mountains of data as part of my job. That 2 terabytes of data is an extreme amount of data to go through. I mean, extreme. This case is gargantuan, and I believe it's the most expensive in the state of Ohio's history. It's just so you can kind of, 2 million items to go through. I mean, think about that. 2 million.
Yeah,
and that's something that they need to lay eyes on and read through. It's not 2 million things you just catalog and move through your day. That's 2 million items you need to assess and understand.
Yeah, that is an astronomical amount of data, for sure. And I can't even imagine how long it's going to take prosecutors and investigators to go through that much data.
Oh, I mean, months and months and months.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say maybe a couple years. I don't know. Maybe I'm off base. It is a metric F ton of data, for lack of better terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a scientific term, a metric shit ton.
Yeah, exactly. That's a scientific Craig term.
That's right. Special prosecuting attorney Angela Canepa agreed that 2 terabytes of information would take months to comb through, and she said that the state had agreed to provide focus on the evidence to the defense to help them narrow down what they need to analyze before the trial.
The 27-year-old Wagner, along with his father Billy, mother Angela, and younger brother Jake, are accused of the execution-style murders of 8 members of the Roden family. The victims are Christopher Roden, 40, his older brother Kenneth Roden, 44, his cousin Gary Roden, his former wife Dana Lynn Roden, 37, and their children Clarence Frankie Roden, 20, Hannah Mae Roden, 19, Christopher Roden Jr., 16, and Frankie's fiancée, Hannah Gilley.
His younger brother Jake, father and mother all appeared in court for their own motions hearing throughout the week. During a previous hearing, his attorneys made an admittedly unusual request. They asked if it would be possible for George IV to be moved back into solitary confinement. He spent time in solitary confinement following his initial arrest, but had since been moved to a regular cell.
His attorney said the request had nothing to do with how he was being treated or his safety. George IV made the request through his attorney because he wants to be able to read the Bible and do the things that he likes to do, his attorney said.
From WHIO, on November 6, 2019, investigators returning to a horse farm owned by the family to further investigate. Former Attorney General Mike DeWine, now governor, said a custody battle involving Sophia, the younger daughter of one of the victims, Hannah Mae Roden, and one Jake Wagner, played a central role in the killings.
December 4th, 2019. Rita Newcomb, accused of forging custody documents and lying to a grand jury and investigators to cover up the Roden family murders, pleads guilty to a lesser charge, obstruction of official business, and a deal with prosecutors. It's not a good Christian thing to lie, so I didn't want to do that anymore, she said.
George Billy Wagner III had not appeared in a Pike County courtroom since September 17th, when he shared a court date with his youngest son. On December 9th, Billy Wagner's hearing Monday went the same way his previous hearing in September went. Run-of-the-mill motions hearings discussing multiple small items such as sharing of information between the prosecution and defense. The defense asked for an extension on the deadline to file substantive motions, and Judge Randy Deering agreed. Wagner's attorneys said that they needed more time to go through their files and evidence that they have compared to what the prosecution has.
On February 10th, Edward Jake Wagner, the youngest, waived his right to a speedy trial, which means it could be more than a year until the trial. Separately, Wagner's attorney raised concerns about jailhouse snitches, saying inmates at the Franklin County Jail where Wagner is being held are trying to get information out of him about the case.
Jake Wagner, together with his mother, father, and brother, are all charged with aggravated murder and planning and killing the Roden family on April 22, 2016. They face 22 criminal charges, including 8 counts of capital murder. In addition to murder charges, Wagner is also charged with unlawful sexual conduct with a minor for having sexual contact with Hannah Roden when she was 15 and he was 20, according to this indictment. His next court appearance is scheduled for April 8th. That was a lot to get through. There are 4 people being charged with murder here, and they're all running simultaneously, and it's a lot to digest. But what do you make of the updates since we covered this case last?
I'm not surprised by the Jake Wagner waiving his right to a speedy trial, wanting to drag his feet. I'm sure there'll be more information come out about the jailhouse snitches and them trying to get information out of him about the case. I'm not sure why that they would be concerned unless they're some kind of informant inside, but, who knows. But yeah, that's no joke. There's a lot of stuff going on here and a lot of wheels turning, and it's happening right now. The next court appearance is April 8th, so all of this stuff is in motion as we speak.
Yeah, it's incredible. This did happen it'll be 2 years ago. 4 years ago. Gosh, where did time fly? 4 years ago in April. So that's the time we've already been spending, waiting on this thing. So I'm not sure when it will go to trial for everybody involved. And, some of the folks on the outskirts, like Rita Newcomb and such, they've already been, they've gone through the system and pled down to lesser charges.
Just based on the amount of data and with everything that's going on right now, I have a feeling that we're probably going to be updating this case for a couple more years at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to our final update for this episode, we are headed back to California, where we talk about the latest on the Golden State Killer. So just to recap very briefly, since this was such a long case, the Golden State Killer, he was the serial rapist, and burglar who started as the Visalia ransacker, then moved on to the East Area rapist, then on to the original Night Stalker, and finally, once all of those were all tied together, the Golden State Killer committed at least 13 murders and more than 50 rapes and over 100 burglaries from 1974 to 1986, and that is just what we know about.
From the Sacramento Bee, prosecutors won approval of the search warrant from Sacramento Superior Court Judge Steve White at 8:26 a.m. on February 3rd and plan to obtain swabs of his cheeks the next morning at the Sacramento County Main Jail, court records say. The order signed by Judge White authorizes force to be used if Mr. D'Angelo refuses to comply with the taking of the buccal swabs, according to documents filed by D'Angelo's public defenders, who complained that they learned of the attempt on extraordinarily short notice. The warrant was provided to defense counsel more than 5 hours later at 1:51 p.m. on February 3rd. The defense wrote in a motion to stop the warrant from being served. Prosecutors agreed to hold off until the end of the day on February 4th, but White ultimately ordered them to hold off pending a hearing on the matter March 12th.
Court documents indicate the new DNA samples were to be used to help with the preliminary hearing now scheduled to begin May 12th, one that is expected to include as many as 150 witnesses and last 8 to 10 weeks. If the preliminary hearings find enough evidence to try D'Angelo, his trial will take place in Sacramento with the help from 5 other counties. D'Angelo, age 74, was arrested at his Citrus Heights home in April of 2018 after authorities spent decades searching for a suspected of a string of murders, home invasions, and rapes between 1974 and 1986 in Sacramento, Contra Costa, Orange, Santa Barbara, Tulare, and Ventura counties. So, we did a huge series on this case, and, eventually the whole genetic genealogy discovery happened, and they caught D'Angelo, and they brought him in, and we've been, waiting since April 2018. So we're coming up on 2 years on that case, where nothing really has happened in these hearings. He's been to the court several times. It's been mostly a bunch of motions to try and do things like bar the media from, being in the courtroom at the time of the case. That's, stuff his defense has been trying to do. They've also, been trying to push things back because there's just like such a mountain of evidence similar to the Pike County murders, except this is from 74 to 86 and spans a lot more time. So there's probably, I would have to imagine, similar amounts of data to comb through in this case. But so the judge had ruled to speed up this trial a bit because the victims in this case were so old, and also the defendant is so old that he wants to move this along sooner than later because of, the age of the victims. And he felt that, they deserve their time to see justice served. Some of the victims have passed away. Some of them are super, super old now in their 70s and 80s. And so he just wants to get things moving.
And the only thing that really kind of caught me off guard with the update that was provided from this case was I'm not sure why they have to have a motion to force him to give a DNA sample, because I thought when we were going through all those lengthy discussions on this case that, and maybe I'm completely incorrect in not remembering what we discussed, but I thought it was a requirement for California inmates it was mandatory for them to give a DNA swab when they were processed into the system. I'm not sure why they have to get a new motion to get a fresh DNA sample from D'Angelo.
I'm not sure how it works exactly, but maybe it has to do with he's not like officially he's not officially sentenced to jail. Okay. He's just held till his trial, and I don't know if there's a difference there. There may be some nuance. Obviously we're not lawyers, so right. Who knows. But yeah, it's one of those things where there probably is some sort of process around it. But I think the key here is they are granted the authority to use force.
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, he's an old man. Shouldn't take much force to get a spit swab from him.
You never know, man. This guy he's one crafty SOB. So who knows what he would do and what he's like in jail. If you watch some of these videos of him appearing in court, he definitely, there's just something about this guy. He just has a look about him. Not even, if you didn't even know that he had committed all of these crimes, you would still think like something's just off with this dude.
Yeah. And we talked about that. All of a sudden he appears in court, and from witness testimony and some of the facts that we covered, he's an older guy, but he was in really good shape. He was always riding his motorcycle, working in his garage, doing yard work and stuff, and didn't appear to be impaired or, physically impaired in any way to do stuff, even at his age. But then all of a sudden he shows up in court and he can't even walk into the courtroom. They wheel him in with a wheelchair, and he's kind of slouched over a little bit.
Yeah, well, and now he's been coming in, walking in. However, he is extremely thin now, and he looks very old and sickly. And I don't know. There were reports back when these crimes were happening, like if you would see like composites, he would always look a little bit different. And sometimes he would be described as being heavier, and then sometimes he'd be described as being thinner and muscular. And there's nothing scientific about that, but perhaps because it's such a subjective thing, and you're dealing with people trying to describe a perpetrator after a serious offense, and human memory is just not that great and everything's subjective. But perhaps he was kind of a shapeshifter in a sense, where he would try to disguise his build a little bit, so that way it was throwing police off. Like for one of these couple months stretch, he's 20 pounds heavier, and then he goes through and tries to lose a bit of weight, and then now he's a little bit thinner and more muscular and lean, and then maybe grows his hair out or wears a wig, or who knows. But he seems like he's potentially capable of doing those things, and I will be extremely fascinated to hear what evidence the prosecution has that they haven't really released publicly yet, or some of the things that they can confirm that were suspected along those lines.
Yeah, once they actually get to the trial, that's going to be some good stuff, and I'm hoping we can provide a lot of information on that when we get to that point, for sure. And as far as the shape-shifting and stuff, I totally agree. I think it's almost like he goes through these phases to kind of change himself to the current environment, whether he's committing a burglary, committing a rape, murdering. Now he's in court, he's locked up, he's being held. it may be just another phase of what he's, transitioning to fit in more to his surroundings. Maybe he's trying to make people feel sorry for him. I don't know.
Well, that's what it seems like. It seems like he's trying to change his appearance to seem more frail and like he couldn't possibly have done these things and just appear in a position of weakness in order to try and leverage the situation the best that he can. That's what it seems like. It could all be coincidental. There were reports that when he first got booked in, he was like ramming his head into the wall and like trying to kill himself or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And, those are all rumors right now. But it's just interesting. He comes in and the reports were when they arrested him, he was out like a couple of days before, flying down the street on his motorcycle, no regard for speed and just like a complete reckless abandon. And then you see him in court and he looks, he's overweight, but like, you know what I mean? He has that healthy look about him. Right. Like, yeah, he's overweight, but he's active. Like you can tell he's doing his thing. And then suddenly he starts to appear super thin and gaunt and sickly looking. And it just seems like he's trying to play everybody.
Yep, he very well could be. Or it could be the fact that, when he was arrested and cuffed, he was worried about going back into his house to get that pot roast out of the oven. So you can you can guarantee that motherfucker hasn't had a pot roast for 2 years in jail.
Yeah, exactly. He's eating those bologna sandwiches.
Exactly. Cold cuts.
That's right. All right. That's it for us for this week. We'll be back soon with a new case. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at @killer_podcast. You can hit us up on Facebook, the Killer Podcast Facebook group, or on Instagram at Killer Podcast, all one word. Or you can also shoot us an email with any case reaction, suggestions, comments, hate mail, whatever you want. Send that on over to killerpodcast@gmail.com. Craig, any parting words?
Nope, no parting words here other than I'm looking forward to the next case and version 2.0 of the show. I think we're going to have a really good time and we're going to have a lot of good content and I'm ready to get this show back on the road.
We are, and if you would do us a solid, if you could, recommend us to a friend. Spread the love. We appreciate you. We're glad to be back. Thanks to those of you who spent time chatting with us on social media over the break since we last recorded. This was a break we weren't intending to take for a long period of time, and it almost turned into not returning at all. So we're glad to be back, and we're glad to have you with us. So we look forward to speaking with you during our next case. Stay safe. All right, if you stuck around, you have found an Easter egg. Craig and I are doing a post-show after probably most shows, barring time permitting and all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of touch on our hiatus, if you will. Would you like to indulge me in that?
Yeah, I guess. What do you want to talk about? What we did all this time off, or?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a little background on what had been going on. So last that we recorded and published was May, June last year, I believe. So getting close to a year. So I was getting a little burnt out. My real job that I have was hitting on all cylinders, and they had us working just nonstop. We were just super busy. So that left me little time to do this. It's a lot of work to get in and do the research, to write it up, then to record it and edit it and publish it. It is a lot of work. It's fun, but it's a lot of work. And when all that was going on, I just burnt out. And I was burnt out at my work. I was burnt out doing this, and I needed a break. So Craig and I decided we would take a little bit of a hiatus, but we didn't plan to take a long one. And in the meantime, the wife and I had conceived kid number 2, but then we lost it. So that was pretty rough. So after that, I just really wasn't motivated to do this at all. And since then, we have conceived child number 2 again, and things are going very well. And we are due sometime in June. So, that was a little bit of what was going on in my life. And I know you had some similar things at your job. as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, things never slow down on the job side. I don't think for either one of us, to be honest. It's always busy, and then life always has those curveballs. You had some, pretty devastating news there mid last year, but everything is good and heading in the right direction now. I don't want to say the right direction, but in a happy direction.
Yeah, it actually feels different. Like 2019 to me, I've never had this happen in my life. I've always been very, very fortunate, very lucky, and I have obviously had ups and downs, but last year was like a just nonstop onslaught of just crap, and it was just a crappy year. And I don't know what it was, but the whole year felt wrong, and on so many levels, and I just never felt like myself. I never felt like I never had a good balance of work and life, and I'm somebody who needs to create things. I need to be like doing things, and that fulfills me. But when I get out of sorts and then I can't dedicate my time to doing the creative stuff, and I'm trying to stretch myself too thin, things just felt off the entire year. But 2020 has felt like a complete 180. You and I both got promotions at work, which is freaking awesome. I think this is the first time in my life I've ever had a promotion within the same job. Now I've promoted 2 other jobs where I've kind of like, applied and got the job, which would be like an increase for me. But to actually be promoted within the same role, that was the first time I think that's ever happened to me in my work career, which is kind of funny.
It's the same. It's the first time for me as well, in the same role at the same company. It seemed like there for a while, if you wanted to advance, if you wanted to, get what you felt like you were worth earning on the market, you had to move every 3 to 4 years. That's just kind of how it felt. So I think things are settling in with my company now. I got, like you said, got a promotion to the next level. With that comes more responsibility, but I mean, it's good. It's a good transition for me because I was starting to feel that burnout on the work side, and I didn't want to have to start looking around again because I absolutely hate that.
Yeah, it's the worst. I was feeling kind of the same way, admittedly. I was thinking I was ready and deserving to be pushed up in my current job, and if I didn't get it, I probably would have started to look around. Not that I would have done anything about it, because I really do love my job, and I love the team that I'm with, and I work with a lot of very talented people, but in which I haven't actually ever experienced in any other job where I don't dislike a single person on my team. Every single person is cool, and they're all very helpful, and it's a pretty large group of people. They're just very good at hiring talented, smart individuals, which is awesome. But yeah, so it was getting tough, and I think a lot of it had to do with just my 2019 mindset just being, tossed to the side. This year's already turned around, and you and I were able to get back on the same page, get running on some shows again, which is awesome. I'm super excited about it. I think the plan going forward is to kind of cut the shit at the beginning of the show, get to the point, get in and out, be done. And then if you guys want to stick around and listen to Craig and I BS, if we feel like it, that episode or whatever, we'll be here, because we also like to just talk shit. And I always like listening to podcasts where the hosts are real and where you get to connect with them. I find that fascinating. Some people don't, and that's fine. Everybody's different. So if you're one of those people, you'll probably stick around and listen to us. And
yeah, it's going to be a good time. And I completely agree. There's some shows you listen to that it sounds like you're listening to a robot read a script. They don't never say anything about themselves personally. They don't share any stories or moments or something that has impacted the way they feel about a certain thing. And I think that's a positive for us in this show. And I agree. Cut the BS out at the beginning, because we were getting some complaints about it. Not that I care. If anybody knows me or have read my comments in the past, they know I absolutely don't give a crap. But it's good to get the show out of the way for those people that want to hear it. Get right into it. Yep. Give them the story, give them the case, and then, like you said, if we feel like shooting the shit after we're done, if we go back to some 4 a.m. recordings, I don't know how often that'll happen, but
yeah, right.
It's good just to it's a good decompression too, because especially if it's a really bad case and you really get to thinking about it and trying to provide your perspective on it, it's good just to have a release time after the fact to decompress and just get back out of that gear that you were in when you were covering the case.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just, it's fun to interact with the audience later. We've had a lot of good conversation with things that we were saying that were like little personal stories, or, you know, we get a lot of feedback on that stuff where it connects with a certain person and how they might be feeling at that time. And I just really enjoy that, that communication. And, I think on some more exciting news for us, you know, you and we're taking it very seriously, and we're kicking it up, and we plan to build a business around this. And I think to do that, we need to be direct to the audience up front and then provide whatever we want on the side. And we appreciate those of you who listen, and hopefully you can help us evangelize the product and get it out to more people. It would be great to do this full time as a job instead of the other job we have. But I love doing both. So, you know, whatever happens is awesome. But we appreciate the love and support for those people who have hung with us this whole time.
Exactly. It was really good to see that there was some people out there that were happy that we're coming back. That was a good feeling. And, you know, as far as spreading the love too, I think probably the hardest thing that I have with doing this is going out there and asking people to promote it, to evangelize it, to get out there and tell their friends, because I've always been, you know, I want it to grow organically, but to get to that next level where we want to be, we have some specific goals on, you know, how much content we want to put out, you know, how many downloads we want to get, just the metrics of the whole thing, where we want to go. It's going to take some work, and it's going to definitely take some help from the listeners too.
Yeah. It's one of those things, you know, just we need to work hard and push it up the hill.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to go down the hill, like in the Delphi case. Downhill? Down the hill?
That's right. Hey, I wanted to end this on a lighthearted note. So you told me a story a few months ago, and it's been resonating with me ever since. And I was dropping my son off at preschool today, and on my way home, we were trading a few texts about getting ready to record. And I just started laughing to myself hysterically in the car out loud, which I don't do very often. Can you tell the audience this story about you at I believe it was a high school football game and what went down?
Oh my God. I was sitting here for a second like, what story are you talking about? Because we share a lot between the two of us. Yeah.
Yeah, this one it's funny and it's not too embarrassing. But I laugh to myself about this, just knowing you. This story just cracks me
knowing
up.
that it absolutely 100% happened. So yeah, I can tell the story quick, and then we can jump off. But what had happened was, the local high school where I live. I'm part of the Band Boosters program. My son is in marching band, and we man the concession stands at all of the home football games. So one of my responsibilities is making sure I'm like the runner. I make sure everything's stocked. We have 2 different locations at the football field. So, you know, I spend a lot of time running stuff back and forth. Well, in this one case, it was getting towards the end of the game, and usually, I mean, admittedly, if you've listened to other shows, I am a little bit older, getting a little bit more tired at the end of the night from, you know, lugging cases of drinks and things like that. But the second stand, they needed more pizza. They had sold out. So like, okay, I'll run it over. But I'm really tired. I'm just thinking of a million things that I got to do when I get back. So I take a shortcut right in front of the student section of the football stadium. There's a little path along the running track. So I got the pizzas. I'm going down through there, you know, then obviously you got a bunch of high school kids, probably 150 to 200 of them up there cheering on the football game or whatever. And then the first couple rows see me walking along. I've got this gigantic stack of pizzas. Like, all the kids started yelling, "Hey, we'll take some pizza. Pizza sounds good," and blah, 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 whatever they were saying. And I'm just wanting to get over there, drop it off, and get back, and not even thinking. And I'm like, okay, a bunch of high school kids, I'll just give them the rock on sign. I'll hold up my hand and, you know, hold up the 2 fingers for a second. But then something snapped in my mind, and I don't even know why it happened, but I went from the devil horns to the middle finger, and the front, and in the front 2 rows of the student section just went absolutely dead quiet. And in that very split second, when I realized what I had done by holding up my finger, they got quiet. I put it down, and I didn't even look to my side. I just walked straight ahead, dropped off the pizzas, and I took the long way back out around so I wouldn't be seen again, because I was afraid I was going to start getting shit thrown at me. But Yeah, I wasn't in my right mind delivering pizzas that night. I was tired. I was ready to go home, and them yelling in my ear, I wanted to say, oh yeah, that's cool, rock on or whatever, but I think in the back of my mind I was really wanting to say, fuck you, leave me alone.
You just gave him the whatever pal. Dude,
I hope nobody had their cell phone camera out for that. I've not seen any footage of it, so.
Well, you still have a job, so you didn't get canceled, which is pretty awesome.
It's a volunteer job, too. Let's be fair, but still. I didn't get called by the school principal or any of the crazy stuff like that. Hey, we hear you were flipping the student section off.
Oh, my God. I'm crying. I just can imagine, like, how often are you flipping people off that's your reflex?
Normally,
instead of giving them the horns, you just give them the finger and take off. And it's not even on purpose. You're not even mad at them.
It just happened.
You just give them the finger and you're out.
It was like an involuntary twitch. Boom, finger. And I realized what I was doing, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell did I just do? To answer that question, I flip people off in the car quite a bit. I have been known to have pretty bad road rage, and people that don't know how to drive, they usually see the finger. They either see the finger, or if the kids are in the car, they'll see the thumbs up, and they know exactly what that means because they know the kids are in the car.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I think about that story probably like once a week now, and just spontaneously bust out laughing. Just Craig in front of a crowd of people. Like, Craig's a really quiet dude, and until you get to know him, and then he just, then he opens up. But he's like me. We're both pretty quiet. We don't really enjoy being the focus of attention, or don't do well in crowds, probably. I'll speak for myself. I'm not a huge public speaker.
I'm not either.
So the fact that you just full on bust out the middle finger.
Yeah, I equate that almost to be, let's say, somebody that I am very quiet, pretty reserved, pretty introverted or whatever. Sometimes you won't know it on the show because I'm going to put my foot in my mouth and say some stupid shit. I'm sure that's going to happen sooner than later. But yeah, I equate that to like being the Boy Scout troop leader and then just walking out and flipping all the kids off for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh man. Too good. All right. Well, that's it for this week. If you want to salute Craig and give him the whatever pal, feel free to send it his way. All right, guys.
Yeah, real quick. That honestly is a great idea. If everybody that hears the after show wants to flip me off on social media, please feel free. Send me the finger.
Yeah, pass him the whatever pal. Double whatever pals even. All right, guys. We'll catch you later.